It started like too many stories do before sunrise, on a quiet street, with suspicion in the air and a hand near a gun, an old black man walking alone, a young white cop in a patrol car, a misunderstanding waiting to happen. But what happened next didn't end in violence. It didn't end in tragedy. It ended in silence and a salute. Because that man wasn't just anyone. He was a United States Marine. And the moment he raised his hand, not in fear, but in honor, everything changed. This is the story of two uniforms, two worlds, and one moment that shocked everyone and inspired a city. The sun hadn't yet risen, but the old black man was already walking down Jefferson Street in his worn boots, his Marine Corps cap pulled low over his eyes. He wasn't lost, he wasn't threatening. He was just headed to the bus stop after spending all night volunteering at the veterans shelter. Then the cruiser pulled up behind him, lights off, silent. "Hey, hands where I can see them," the officer shouted, voice sharp with suspicion. The old man stopped. His spine straightened as if a switch had flipped. He didn't turn around, didn't panic, didn't run. He simply raised his hands slowly, fingers steady. The officer stepped out, hand hovering over his gun. It was early. He was nervous, alone. A call about a suspicious man had come in from someone in the neighborhood. But when the Marine finally turned around, his eyes met the young officer's. There was no fear in them, only something deeper, something proud. Then, the old man lowered one hand and lifted it into a perfect salute. The officer froze. The silence between them stretched, thick with history and misunderstanding. Then the Marine spoke, calm, commanding, unmistakably military. Staff Sergeant William J. Carter, United States Marine Corps, retired, 3 tours, Bronze Star. You were saying, officer? The young cop's hand fell away from his holster, like it weighed 1,000 pounds. He looked down, ashamed, realizing this man wasn't a threat, he was a hero. A man who had bled for a country that still feared the color of his skin. A man who had once carried a rifle through the jungles of Vietnam, and now had to fear a badge in his own neighborhood. "I am sorry, sir," the officer mumbled, voice cracking. But the Marine didn't respond with anger. He stepped forward, hands still raised in salute, and said, "Protect and serve, right? Then protect better. Serve all." Tears welled in the cop's eyes. That morning, he didn't write a report. He didn't make an arrest. He asked the Marine to join him for coffee. And every Thursday since, they've met at the same diner, one old warrior, one young officer talking about justice, service, and what it really means to wear a uniform. Because, sometimes, a raised hand isn't surrender, it's a salute that reminds the world dignity doesn't beg, it stands tall. The 2 men sat in silence at the diner booth that first morning. Steam rose from their coffee mugs, untouched. Outside, the world kept moving. Buses hissed past. Early joggers weaved through traffic, but inside that small corner diner, time felt still. The young Officer Reyes finally broke the silence. "They didn't teach us about this at the academy," he said softly. Sergeant Carter looked up. His eyes were steady, not accusing, just tired. "No, son," he replied. "They teach you how to control a scene, not how to read a man." Officer Reyes nodded slowly, shame settling over his shoulders like a weighted vest. "You had every reason to be angry." Sergeant Carter took a sip of his coffee and said something that Officer Reyes would never forget. "I didn't survive war, racism, and the loss of my brothers in arms just to let bitterness be the final chapter of my life." That wake, Officer Reyes asked his precinct commander if he could launch a new community outreach initiative. He called it Salute and Serve. Every month, veterans from the neighborhood would speak to cadets at the police academy, not in a classroom, not from behind a desk, but walking the blocks they grew up on, telling stories not found in textbooks. At the first event, Sergeant Carter stood before 50 new recruits. He pointed at the corner where the incident had happened and said, "That sidewalk over there, I was nearly gunned down on it for walking like I belonged." He paused. "Thing is, I do belong, and so do you, but you need to know the weight of your badge before you earn the right to wear it." The room was silent. One of the recruits raised her hand and asked, "Why didn't you yell back, Sergeant?" He smiled. "Because power doesn't always shout. Sometimes it just stands tall, raises a hand, and reminds the world who the hell it is. Months passed. The neighborhood started to change. Not overnight, not magically, but steadily. Officers began recognizing more faces than they feared. Reyes earned a promotion, but still joined Carter every Thursday morning. They argued. They laughed. They talked about justice like it was a family recipe, something passed down, protected, and shared. Then, one Thursday, Reyes showed up late. His eyes were red. "What happened?" Carter asked. "There was a kid, 16, Reyes said quietly. "He ran when we pulled up. My partner reached for his taser. But I remembered you. So I shouted, told the kid to stop, told my partner to wait. And the kid, he turned around, said his name was Elijah. He was just scared." Reyes swallowed hard. "Turns out, Elijah's dad served with you in Fallujah." Carter's hands trembled slightly as he set his mug down. "You did right," he said. "I didn't just do right," Reyes replied. "I remembered who taught me how to." By the time Carter passed away 2 years later, the mayor attended his funeral. So did every cop in the precinct. The flag on his casket was folded with the same care he once folded into his salutes. Officer Reyes delivered the eulogy. He stood before the crowd and said, "I once reached for my gun because I was trained to see a threat, but he raised his hand and taught me to see a teacher, a warrior, a man." He paused, then gave the final salute of the ceremony. Tears falling freely. "Rest easy, Sergeant. We see you now." In the end, it wasn't a badge or a uniform that commanded respect. It was how a man carried his story. Sergeant Carter didn't raise his voice. He didn't resist. He didn't need to. Because in the face of suspicion, he answered with dignity. In the face of fear, he responded with honor. And in the face of a drawn weapon, he offered a salute that said, "I've fought for this country. I've bled for it. And I still believe in what it can become." And because of that moment, one raised hand, an officer changed, a city woke up, and a neighborhood began to heal. So next time you judge someone by how they look, remember this: some hands are raised to surrender, but others, they're raised to remind the world we are not broken. We are built from fire, and we still stand tall. In honor of every hero whose strength isn't loud but lasting, rest in power, Sergeant Carter. Want more stories like this? Hit like, subscribe, and share this with someone who needs hope today. Comment below, stand tall. If you believe dignity is stronger than fear, turn on notifications for your weekly dose of truth, honor, and powerful storytelling.